So, despite my attempts to try and fool everyone that I'm just this anxious bundle that has never really done anything with her life, the truth is, I was, for a period of time, an executive coach and a happiness consultant. And by all accounts, I was okay. My clients used to tell me I helped them. So, it's one of the debates that I often have with the psychiatrist because I don't feel like it was any help. And he's like, but you have testimonial after testimonial of people telling you did great work. But the truth is that I guess I wanted just to take you through a little bit of the more technical, sciencey bits that underpin Cultivating Happiness, the book, because there really is some sound science, and positive psychology really is, in my opinion, the best researched, the most robust part or avenue of psychology that there is. So it is definitely the place where I think it is most useful to use, and where I have focused my attention over the past 10 years or so. So, for those of you who kind of don't know my background, I had a corporate career for many years and started in IT, then got into the process world, then got into HR, and then decided that I wanted to become a coach, and retrained. Oh, that must be nearly 15 years ago now. And then over time developed this practice. I've specially chosen to record this now so it's quiet. The dogs are away at the vet, and now there's low-flying planes. The dogs will at some point arrive, so expect noise and what have you, but that's usual, right? Okay, so really the starting point for when I was thinking about cultivating happiness, and in fact my journey into positive psychology at all, kind of started by accident or as chance, I suppose. I stumbled across a TED talk by a chap called Shawn Achor. I will put the link in so that you don't need to worry about it. In my opinion, it is still one of my all-time top 3. It's actually my favorite TED talk, but there are some ones by Brene Brown and Kenneth Robinson that are also, or Ken Robinson, sorry, that are also pretty amazing. But I will put in the link to the Shawn Achor one. And essentially what he was talking about is kind of the birth of positive psychology, but also how we could apply that to our daily lives. And it really resonated with me in a way that actually up until then, a lot of the material in my coaching journey, my learning journey as a coach, hadn't resonated with me. So his findings, or what he reports on in that TED talk, is he really talks about the 5 things that we can do practically and easily, and kind of within the space of 21 days, see real benefit in terms of our happiness. And his argument goes further to that and says, we live in a world where we keep thinking, well, oh, once I've done that, I will be happy. When I've made the board, I'll be happy. When I finish my degree, I'll be happy. When I get a job, I'll be happy. When I have so much in the bank, I'll be happy. And in his opinion, and in mine too, we have got it the wrong way around. Actually, what the science is telling us is when we are happy, our performance improves, and improves to a dramatic degree. So his argument, and mine, is that we need to be focusing much more on happiness as a subject, and not the achievement, So we keep thinking, I mean, how many people have you heard the story of that they've been waiting their whole lives to retire so that they could do all the things that they liked, and then died within a few weeks of having retired. And that is very much the case in terms of why wait for happiness to be something that we have put over the cognitive horizon. Let's make happiness something that we are actually focusing on. Now, a little bit where this does become a little bit dodgy for me, and I have a sort of a philosophical question mark that if I ever get to meet Shawn Achor, I will surely ask him is that there was a point in my coaching life, and a little bit his material speaks to this, about making coaching a goal. And the problem with making coaching a goal, as with so many things in our lives, and we're going to talk about this a lot when we get to the 5 elements, is that what we are doing is that we are making something that is really subjective and setting a goal against it. And goals are really best, the kind of typical SMART goals. Is it specific? Is it measurable? All those good things is really best suited to objective things. And what we can fall into the trap of is that if you're saying my goal is to be happy, well, how are you going to measure that? And for a lot of us, and particularly people like me and like many of my clients who are fairly self-critical, it means that often the bar becomes perfection. And to be perfectly happy 100% of the time isn't really realistical. As a friend of mine said, it's like a unicorn. Lovely, but you're not going to get one. And I guess that is the issue that I take a little bit with some of this material. And it's one of the things I really want you to hold as we work through the material is this is something to hold lightly. As soon as you start saying, my goal is to be happy in 2019, you are doomed to failure, in fact. You've actually just made yourself unhappy because you will not meet that goal. Because there will be things in your life that happen that make you desperately unhappy or anxious or upset or what have you. But it doesn't mean that the aspiration to try and make happiness something that we pay attention to important. So I really want you to think about as we work through these things is that paying attention to happiness rather than making happiness a goal, I think is preferable, because then making it something you pay attention to, we haven't set this kind of pass mark, this undefinable pass mark that for many of us we will feel that we have failed no matter actually how well we did. So just to warn you guys that in this webinar, I'm just talking. There are no notes or anything like that. Shawn Achor has fabulous notes in his TED Talk, so you can look at that to get, the material, the slides and things like that. But I'm just going to talk today a little bit about what these things are. I have my happy notes here, so if you see me glancing down from time to time, that's what I'm doing. So let's jump straight into what the 5 things are. So in this TED Talk, I was really taken with the idea that there are really only 5 things that we need to focus on in order to get to a happier place. So spending time on meditation, journaling, exercise, gratitude, and acts of kindness are the 5 things that Shawn Achor mentions in the TED Talk, are things that we can implement into our lives or spend more time and focus on in our lives, and that are going to make us feel happier. So let's go through them one by one. Meditation, let's go through them one by one, because all of them can be problematic if we tackle them in a way that a lot of the self-help industry is kind of imposing on us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, and then I'm going to give you some suggestions about how you can do it in a way that's lighter and brighter and easier, less likely to make you feel like you failed, and less kind of guru-esque, I suppose. So meditation is one of the ones that is really problematic, It is one of the ones that people tend to internally use. My favorite crowd of people, you will have realized by now, are the ones that I call the spiritual materialists. The people who've turned meditation into kind of a competitive sport. I meditate for 20 minutes a day. Only 20 minutes? I spend 45 minutes after my yoga class in pure meditation, and on and on and on it goes. Now, the thing about meditation is that in most of the Western world, the people who brought meditation and the whole mindfulness movement were heavily influenced by the Eastern religions, specifically Buddhism and Hinduism to a lesser extent, both of which have kind of meditation and times of quietness as a core part of their faith. And a lot of that thinking is really sound, a lot of the actual doing is really sound. But when it was brought over to the West, it was brought over with this heavy kind of, well, if you're not prepared to commit to being a Buddhist nun, I'm not sure that you can be mindful enough in your life. And that is kind of my problem with it. So the things that you can do to meditate, there are tons of things that you can meditate that go right through to those kind of let's go on silent retreats, which I have tried and failed. But not everyone fails. For some people, that is perfection, But if you are someone who's like me, who finds sitting still really hard, it is really hard for a lot of people. So here are some ideas of what you can do to make meditation something that feels less highbrow, less undoable, more something that you can incorporate into your daily life. So one of the really simple things that I learned through a program called HeartMath, which is a biofeedback method of really helping you develop kind of mindfulness and calmness, was a very simple thing. It's 6 breaths. So you're going to breathe in for the count of 6, and you're going to breathe out for the count of 6. And you're going to do that between 5 and 6 times. And here is why. So when we are feeling stressed in our lives, and unhappy in our lives, there's a couple of things that happen. So the stress response happens, So the stress response, there's really 2 bits of the brain that we're interested in for the purpose of this conversation. There's the bit here at the front, your cortex, and that is the bit that's about thinking and reason and logic. It's the bit you want to take with you to work. It's the bit that you want to have about you when you're having a debate with someone, even if you don't agree with them. Sitting further back in our brain, and it looks almost like, those things that go over your ears for in the days before we had so many different Bluetooth options, is something called your amygdala. And your amygdala is the part of your brain that is kind of emotionally responsive and is triggered. And our brains are designed to be on the lookout for danger. That's just how we as humans are designed. So what happens is, let's say I am walking through a nasty bit of town here in Johannesburg. That would be, say, like Hillbrow. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm on my own, and I hear footsteps running quickly behind me. What will happen in my brain is really clever, actually, because it goes, hang on a moment, we're in a potentially dangerous situation. Do we want to, at this moment, be thinking about the success rates of the new local government's implementation of policing in inner city areas? Or would we like to switch that bit of our brain down and divert the energy into our arms and our legs and our bum and our so that we can fight or flight? So fight being, I'm going to take you on, and flight being, I'm going to run like hell and get away from you. So it's a really, really clever mechanism that our brain has. It's how we have survived and thrived as a species. The problem with this feature of our brains is that your brain cannot distinguish the difference between someone running towards you with a knife and someone running towards you with a tight deadline. So often what happens when we find ourselves in a stress situation, be that in the workplace or home or wherever, is the clever bit of our brains switches off and this fight or flight response comes out. And the problem is that you are not making sound judgments. So why am I telling you about this? Because the 6 breaths is a really good way of dealing with that. So when your amygdala is in control, it also makes your body produce adrenaline so that you can fight or flight. So adrenaline is that hormone in your body. You know, when you hear stories of mothers who have lifted cars to get them off their babies, that's adrenaline. It's pushing all your energy into your muscle groups, your big muscle groups, so that you are able to fight or flight. But the amazing thing about your body is that it can reabsorb the adrenaline and get it out your system really quickly, a couple of minutes, minute and a half, in fact. So taking the 6 slow, deep breaths can be really useful in that high stress environment, because what you are doing is you're doing 2 things. One, you are slowing your body down, you're counting your breaths, and if you want to get out of your amygdala and back into your cortex, what you want to do is something that's a cognitive activity, and counting is a cognitive activity, right? So like your mother said, slow down, count to 10. It's really good advice, because counting to 10 makes the clever bit of your brain switch on. But you're also giving yourself time to reabsorb that adrenaline back into your body so that you are fine to go about your business and be able to be logical in the decisions you're making. So that is one thing that you can do. And it's kind of a really easy thing. And it's one of the things I always asked my corporate clients to do, because no one needs to know that you are breathing in and out a little bit slower and that you're inside going 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is a great way that you can do an alternative to the kind of let's go on the 2-week silent retreat. Another one, and this is perfect, is actually my favorite at the moment, and I do it. So I read an article recently that said actually we are at our most creative when we stop, just doing nothing. So I actually, just because of the medication I'm on, is that I have 3 times a day where I have this kind of big slump of energy until one of the medications kicks in. So, at first I was going, oh, I'm just sitting here with no energy. And actually, after I read that article, I said, you know what, I'm going to call it strategizing, so that it has a name for me that makes it feel possible, that I'm not wasting time. But actually what I do is in fact, I will show it to you here if you can see. Here is the day bed that I actually have in my studio. And I actually then take a 20-minute, either a power nap or mostly just a strategizing session. I sit, I daydream, I think my thoughts. It's absolutely true that my best thoughts come out of that, particularly in the writing space. If I'm feeling stuck with something in a plot, actually a daydreaming session really helps. So that for me is, do not overlook the power of just spending 20 minutes daydreaming. Nobody... in fact, I remember my first impression of meditation was like, well, you must clear your mind. You can't clear your mind. Your brains aren't built like that. Even if you think you're clearing your mind, what you're thinking about is clearing your mind. So actually just allowing your brain to kind of go into free thoughts and daydreaming, thinking about things you want to happen and nice things that have happened. It's a really good strategy. So that's the first thing, is meditation. But what I really want to land with you here is the meditation doesn't have to be this thing where you go to a meditation session. It doesn't have to be 40 minutes every day. It can be, I'm actually spending 10 minutes daydreaming in the middle of the afternoon. It can be 6 deep breaths. Meditation doesn't have to be this thing. If you have read, or you're going to read, Cultivating Happy, you will see that this idea that meditation, I had to be really good at it, I had to pass meditation, was one of the things that really, really stood in the way of my finding happiness and being able to implement these techniques myself. And in the book, of course, you will hear all about the third technique, which was, for me, I can't tell you because it's actually kind of like the climax of the book. But when you read the book, you'll find there's one more thing that I did that made meditation possible for me. So that's meditation. The second thing that that Shawn Achor suggests is journaling. And again, he tells you in the TED Talk, and certainly Cultivating Happiness is kind of like a giant journal. And I know you think it will be weird when I tell you that as a writer, I loathe journaling. I cannot stand it. It feels like a waste of time. I could be writing my book. I could be pretty much doing anything other than journaling. But there is really good evidence for specific types of journaling. So what he suggests is reliving positive experiences. So taking time to relive positive experiences can improve our happiness. Now, the standard things that people tell you to do with journaling is just journal. And then you've got this blank page in front of you and you're like, well, what am I supposed to write? In my journey, I tried doing the morning pages. So that the idea behind the morning pages, it's a concept from Julia Cameron, is that you actually just get all this badness, every bad thought that you've got out. You just do 2 pages of free writing before you start your day. But of course, again, for people with big inner critics, free writing before you start your day on anything, well, my mind was just filled with all the ways that I was not enough, that I had failed, that I would never be enough, that no one liked me, and I should really go down into the garden and eat some worms. It works for lots of people. It really didn't work for me. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, journaling, I really don't want to do that, Penny. Like, what are things I could do instead? Well, a couple of alternatives. So there's a whole lot of online journaling tools that are available as apps, where you can journal on your phone. If writing it, physically getting a pen and writing it is your issue, because I know these days I'm a typer, not a writer. If that is your issue, then using online apps, that can be really beneficial to you. And then, of course, there's the alternatives of using other media, so sound and video. So recording it and loading it on a private SoundCloud, or having just a private journal, or even making it public. So you will see that I do lots of Facebook Lives, lots of posts on YouTube and things like that. And a lot of those things are for me. Strangely enough, as much as I am really not comfortable like in a social environment at the moment. I'll get back there, but at the moment it's hard for me. Funnily enough, doing Facebook Live, doing things like this is really easy for me, quite pleasurable for me. And last month I did a month of anxiety that was a month-long journal of what had happened to me since I was diagnosed with anxiety rather than depression. I found that very therapeutic, and it really worked for me about kind of what my thoughts were that day. So that also can be something, that can be really useful to you, depending on how public and private you are, And by the way, you can do a Facebook Live and make it private so that it will be on, only you will see it. But as always, I will say to people, you do not own that platform. You do not know what changes they are going to make in the future. So never, ever, ever put anything on social media that you don't want coming out later at some point when someone has hacked you, So yeah, at the moment I'm using Facebook Live really as you've seen me use it as a kind of journaling tool. I am not a daily journaler, mostly because for me as a writer, I feel like, I've spent all my writing energy writing this journal, and actually I prefer to put that stuff into my stories and, weave it in that way. So, but find a way. Journaling is good. And even if actually your way is verbal, we are going to talk about gratitude a little bit later on. But, even spending time with your loved ones, telling them about a good thing in your day. But the purpose of the activity is to focus on the things that were funny or uplifting, or that you feel happy about or grateful for. It's not to spend time reliving painful experiences, because what we want to do is want to retrain our brain to be focusing on the things that make us happy. So why am I saying that? Well, there is something in our brains called and I hope I'm saying this right, your reticular activation system. It's also called the Camry effect. And that is a bit of our brain that gathers data for what we believe to be true. So they call it the Camry effect because Camrys in their day were super, super popular. And it was like, have you ever noticed that, when you bought a Camry, suddenly the roads were filled with other people who had also bought a Camry? Or pregnant women find this all the time, or women who are struggling to fall pregnant is, you find yourself in that situation, you look around you and everyone's about to burst and have a baby. So that's what it is. So what we're trying to do is make a point of focusing on happy events, because we are retraining our brain to believe that happiness is out there, it's possible, and it's for us, so that we begin to forcing our brains to gather data to back up that belief system. So there is real benefit in doing that. Loads of science behind that one. You just have to find the how that's going to work for you. And please don't be feeling like if you don't have a bookshelf that is filled with journals from when you were 3 years old, you have somehow failed in this. Find the medium, find the way that works for you. There is no pass mark for doing these things, guys. It's just trying them that will help. Now, the third one is exercise, and this is one that I'm a massive failure on. It's really interesting for me because there is a lot of data and a lot of studies that say that, particularly for people who suffer with depression, but for mood in general, that exercise can really, really help. And of course, since I was diagnosed with depression, I have had this kind of love-hate relationship with exercise, where I've gone through times in my life where I'm spending like 3 hours a day exercising, to times in my life where I'm like, changing the channel with the remote felt like exercise. At the moment, I'll be honest with you, not leaving the house too much is making exercise tricky for me. I swim quite a lot in the pool, but it tends to be more like a kind of a floating around rather than like a training for the mid-mile or anything like that. It was interesting to me though, because I told the psychiatrist how I had read all these studies, as one of my deflection techniques that he wasn't interested in. But he was like, well, if you want exercise, if it makes you happy, do it. But there is something in exercise that Paul Achor talks about, that discipline is part of happiness. And so whilst I can't say I'm particularly good on the exercise front, having something that is a discipline, having something that you do every day, is a route to happiness, And obviously there is lots of science between happiness being one of the particular disciplines that will take you there. So I've said in my notes, luckily I have anxiety, I'm off the hook. But truthfully, again, we tend to exercise across the world, but in South Africa even more so. We make exercise competitive all the time. Nobody goes for a run, they have times. And even Fitbits, which I used for ages because I thought that would be a good way of kind of having a goal and setting a goal and working towards it. But again, it became a competitive thing of like, because it's supposed to be people encouraging you, they have groups, but it ended up being a thing of like, oh my word, like I only got in 7,000 steps today, but Popsy Apple Lips got in 12,000, or at the swimming pool, someone comes racing past you and it makes you feel bad about yourself. Or, I am not the slenderest woman, and, there's all these kind of beanpoles who look at you judgmentally and kind of look down on you when you venture into the gym, and it's tough. So, the advice that I was given actually by one of my dear friends who's a biokineticist, she's like, exercise does not have to be like a thing. It doesn't have to be an event in your life. Exercise can be as simple as I'm taking the stairs instead of the lift. I'm not parking in the closest parking bay I can find in the shopping centre. I'm maybe going to go park in the one that's furthest away and take a walk, Maybe, one of the things that she said to me was a really good method, which I find really funny, is being inefficient in your home. So what do I mean about that? She's like, well, let's say like you have laundry that needs to go upstairs, and a pair of shoes that needs to go upstairs. She's like, instead of doing the laundry in one hand and the shoes in the other, take the laundry up and then come down and take the shoes up. And be inefficient in the way that you do things, because those are the things that, that is movement, and, without being too much of a spoiler in the book, of course, things like gardening and just being out and about, taking the dogs for a walk, those are all legitimate ways of getting exercise into your life. So, setting up something like that and trying to stick with it, it is a legitimate way of finding happiness. But honestly, here, it's not one that I'm doing really well with at the moment. The fourth thing that Shawn Achor, sorry, the meds make me very forgetful, talks about his gratitude. Now, gratitude is a bit of a bugbear for me because, again, it's one of those things that's almost been made into a competitive sport. It's because we want to be happy, right? So finding things you can have gratitude for, that's a really good strategy. So today I am sitting here doing this webinar. I am grateful that the dogs have not arrived back from the vet yet, but also it's a lovely day. I'm looking outside. There's a white agapanthus. There's some of my favorite flowers. My garden is filled with beautiful trees. There are bulbuls and barbets, and there's even a paradise flycatcher flitting around there somewhere that I can see. Those are all pretty good things. The problem for me comes in with gratitude when people are like, but you should be finding gratitude from the lesson that you are learning from the difficult things in your life. There's even a movement called radical forgiveness, and you can Google radical forgiveness. There's actually templates that you can use in radical forgiveness, and they can be quite useful if there is kind of someone at work who's really getting under your skin, something like that. But the premise of radical forgiveness is whatever happens in your life, the universe, God, whoever it is for you, wants you to learn a lesson and will keep sending you the lesson until you get it. So when something terrible happens in your life, you should be asking yourself, what is the lesson I'm being taught here that I can be grateful for? Now, you will know if you have spent more than like 30 seconds in my presence that on the 18th of January 2018, I lost my 15-year-old son to cholangiocarcinoma, which is a very rare cancer anyway. It is virtually unheard of in children. I think he is one of 5 documented cases of children having cholangiocarcinoma. Nobody knows why he got it. There is no successful treatment for it. It is always terminal. It is always aggressive. And it's a horrible way to go, especially when you're 15. And so the gratitude thing, you will understand, for me is slightly difficult because, I don't, you can say to me, oh, well, what's the lesson in that? I don't see a lesson in that. This was a kid that ate well, exercised, was engaged, had lots of friends. He did pretty much everything that every self-help book has told you to ever do because he was that kind of person. And so I have a tiny bit of a bugbear when people go to me, well, that's something, you should be grateful for. It's like, no, there is no gratitude in my kid dying, which is a bit of a rant. I apologize. So for me I think the lesson that comes really out of this for me is find the things that you can be grateful for, but legitimate. You don't have to manufacture gratitude out of nothing. So, for example, this morning my husband came back from a trip overseas, a work trip overseas. I am obviously really grateful to have him home because I quite like him. But of all the things that he could have brought me back, what he brought me back was HP sauce in a squeezy bottle. And that's something that I'm really grateful for, because in South Africa, HP sauce always comes in a glass bottle, and it's one of those bugbears that I have, that you're always left with about 20% left in the bottle that you just can't get out, you know? So a squeezy bottle is like, yay! I get really excited about things like that. But there is something. So even in the face of something that's been really traumatic, really difficult, something that I'm still working through, there we go, is something to be grateful for. And actually just thinking, I actually have a smile now just thinking about how pleased that squeezy bottle of HP sauce makes me. So I think the important thing here with gratitude is that it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to force yourself to be grateful for things that aren't good. But what you can do is make sure that you are spending time every day, whether it's in your daydreaming meditation or in your formal journaling or just in the conversations that you're having with family and friends, finding that one thing that went, you know what, that made me really chuffed. I was really chuffed about that today, you know. That for me is you know, that's something where gratitude can be really, really useful and really important. So I feel like I'm umming and ahhing and stumbling a lot in this webinar, and I do apologize for that. So that is gratitude. Please don't try and look for the terrible things and try and think, how can I be grateful for this? Focus on the things, even the tiny things, because even on your worst day of your life, yeah, there are things you can be grateful for. Let me tell you a story about that. So it's, I don't know, we are, I think, 10 days short of Joshua's memorial service. And because Joshua was a superhero fan, and that's why you will see me mostly wearing superhero t-shirts all the time, we decided that instead of asking, you know, having a normal service, we would ask people please to come wearing their favorite preferably DC, because he was a big DC fan, but their favorite comic hero, superhero t-shirt. And we had asked people also that they should, as they came into the venue, we had a whole lot of tea lights, and we said, well, light a candle just as a way to think of Josh and think the thought of Josh there. And halfway through, we're not even, like, I think probably a quarter of the way through Josh's memorial service, what we had not thought is that those tea lights are in very thin aluminium cases, and when you put hundreds of them together, because, you know, I've been thinking, yeah, there'll be 50 people. There was more like 400 or so people who arrived. When you put 400 tea lights all together, it gets really much hotter than the melting point of the little cases that the tea lights are in. So then they started melting and the wax melted, and then we had this huge 6-foot tall flames that burst out of his candles. So here we go. Even in the second worst day of my life, yeah, that was something to be grateful for, because when I think about Josh's memorial, I think about how he would have thought that was just the funniest thing ever. He would have loved that, and he would have been like, but guys, obviously you know what the melting point of aluminium is, because he was a bit of a science nerd. Obviously that would have been a bad idea, and he probably would have given us, you know, a science lecture. So there is something that even in a terrible time, even in your worst day, there are things you can be grateful for. You know, I am also really grateful for my friend Avanti, who made loads of samosas on that day too. So that is the fourth one. So we have meditation, exercise. Where are we? We have meditation, journaling, exercise, gratitude, and our last one is acts of kindness. So acts of kindness is really interesting. So there are loads and loads of studies that show that somebody doing something nice improves the happiness of both the person doing the thing that's nice and the recipient of the nice act. That one is like, there's just no data that doesn't support that, you know. But bizarrely enough, when I was really looking into this was not one that I took particularly seriously. Some of it, again, I suppose, in South Africa, we live in a country that is quite service-oriented. You know, we have a day, Mandela Day, where everybody essentially does 67 minutes worth of service. But actually, most companies, if you work in a big corporate, they have corporate days where they go off and do things. It's always one of the things for me, though, that I think about. I remember years and years ago, my husband went to a talk by Bob Geldof. And he was going, why do we have a whole lot of accountants who are going off and trying to build a house? All you're doing then is taking away a job from a builder. So instead of like having, like, let's go build a house day, why don't we have secretarial aid and accountant aid and use the skills that you have? Because, and I know for myself, many NGOs have real problems with management. They all know a lot about the problem they're trying to solve, but like when it comes to like, do we have an HR policy in place? That's not really where they have their skill set. So it's always one of the things I think of. So in service for me is like, if you are going to do service, like, try and think of the things where you can add value because of your skill set or something particular about you, rather than just going off and doing the ones that actually, a lot of those things have become a bit of a business, actually, but it doesn't have to be anything dramatic. And it can be based on who you are and the things that you like to do. So for me, last year, I actually ran the bloody birthday challenge, which was about collecting blood so that we could replace the blood that Josh had used during his fight with cancer. And I specifically chose that because at the time I knew that I couldn't be relied upon to be in a good enough state to interact with people on any particular day. But I knew that, one, I could harness social media. I know how to make a Facebook group, and I knew how to bully my friends into joining it. And also, I could donate blood on the days when I did feel good enough about it. And that, I had intended to collect 24 units of blood for the South African Blood Service, and we ended up collecting, I've forgotten the exact number, but it was more than 600 units. And in fact, in February, we will be kicking off another blood challenge starting at Crawford College. So that date is somewhere in February. I will let everyone know if it's going to be open to the public. But for example, giving blood is an act of kindness that you can do. But the other thing that we've been doing actually, and it's one of the things that we've started doing since Joshua's death, one of the things that we realized is that we have really, really good medical insurance, and we both had very good high-paying jobs. So we could afford for Josh to go anywhere and have any treatment in the world. And it didn't matter because his illness was terminal. And what that did for me is it really made me rethink about stuff and money and how we spend our money. And one of the things that Shannon and I have started doing in the last year is really focusing in on being kind of, one, getting rid of a lot of stuff in our lives, actually, a lot of the material things, not buying things, spending less than that, and taking a lot of those funds and doing anonymous kind of donations where we see that there's somebody particularly, there's been one or two instances where there have been particular circumstances where people have really needed something. And those range from like my niece needing a new car to other things that I don't want to mention because they are anonymous. So please don't come after this and ask for money, guys. It's not that kind of money. We're not that rich, But what we have done is saying, like, instead of going on that weekend away, maybe that money could be better spent if we organize this for this person, when we hear about those things. So, kind of anonymous philanthropy, whether that is in time, in money, in skills, whatever it is, that is something that the science really backs up. And I have to tell you guys, there is something coming up next week where we also just did an anonymous thing for someone. But I feel really, really excited and really, really pleased and proud. It's something that when I go to bed at night, I think, we did something good there. You know, that's something that I can feel really proud of. So acts of kindness and acts of service, and it can be even as simple as, you know, Shawn Achor in his book talks about something simple as, has somebody done something nice to you? Did you send them an email just to say that? You know, something I did this week was I just actually realized that I have a group of friends. I call them the nighttime call friends. So these are the people who, you know, if I phone you at midnight, they pick up. And a few months ago, my surviving son Christopher had a seizure, and I looked around, and there they were, my nighttime call people, all sitting there with me in casualty, waiting for my son to see the casualty doctor and neurologist, and they would not leave until they knew that he had been admitted and he was safe, and he was not in any danger. And so I took a little bit of time this week just to tell those people that I love them, and I'm really grateful to them, and those things that they do for me, I don't forget them. Like, I remember them and I hold them very close to my heart. And that is something that really, honestly, like, I did that on a day when I was feeling really, really like the sky was going to fall in. And actually, I did that, and I was able after that to get up, and I won't lie, it wasn't my most productive day, but I was able to get up and do 4 or 5 things that I had really been hoping to do. So those are the 5 things that you guys can do that are science-backed and kind of were the inspiration behind Cultivating Happiness. Of course, after that, I got into the whole positive psychology, and that is, do not get me started on the positive psychology research. I can go on and on and on and on. There are amazing experiments and research that's been done out of there, but that is something that you really can do. And they're simple to do, but I beg of you, please do not make happiness into something that's a goal. Don't do that, because you will always fail. You will never meet your goal because you don't know where the KPI is, right? But make it something that you're paying attention to. So change your language around that. Don't make happiness a goal. Make happiness something that you would like to focus more attention on. And don't take the hardest route. So these 5 things, I really recommend you do all 5 of them, and I really recommend you do them in the easiest way possible. You know, to my coaching clients, when they wanted to do something and they found it hard and overwhelming, the question I would always ask them is, what is the smallest possible step that you could take that would inch you closer towards doing that? And that's what I recommend for you, is really focus in on the smallest possible. Make this easy. You know, trying to be happier, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be competitive. But if you do these 5 things and you keep doing them, and you do them in a way that makes it easier for you and doesn't make you miserable, and doesn't make you fail in ways that I'm sure you will find hilarious, but you know, they're moments I call them the we will look back and laugh moments in my life, and I do laugh at them now. It's true. So it has I guess had a long-term impact on my happiness. But those are the 5 things that are research-backed, that are really easy to do. I mean, there are many other strategies too, but these are 5 things that you can do really easily to pay attention to happiness in your life, and your happiness will grow as a consequence. Right, that is all I have time for today, guys. I am going to, just in the comments section, put the link to that Shawn Achor TED Talk. I absolutely recommend that you watch it as soon as you can. It is research-backed, but it is also really, really funny. He's a brilliant speaker. So it's one of those ones, you know, because there's some that you watch and you go, oh my, the material on this is amazing, but oh my word, they're terrible speakers. Shawn Achor is not a terrible speaker. He's an awesome speaker. I very much hope that one day he will realize that I've written a book about him, and like I will actually get to meet him in person. It's like, I know everyone else wants to meet, like, I don't know, Justin Bieber, but for me it's Shawn Achor. He's my hero. and Cormoran Strike, but he's a fictional figure, so that won't happen. Okay, guys, that is it. That's all we have time for now. Put your comments and stuff underneath. I am actually pre-recording this webinar because I woke up this morning to find a little note from Johannesburg City Council telling me that there will be no power in my area on the 16th. So please, guys, write your questions and your comments underneath. If I have power, I'm going to be online and I'm going to be responding to them. So honestly, guys, anything you want to know, please, I will respond to them as quickly as I can. And of course, always in these things is that, you know, if you think this is something that you want to do and you want to find a light, funny way to get into it, there's this amazing book called Cultivating Happiness that I wrote. And if you go and pre-order the ebook before the 22nd of January, there's a whole heap of freebies that I've already told you about. So get out there and buy the book. That is, you know, that's strategy number 6. Buy the book. It won't make you happier. Well, it will make you happier because you'll love it. But it'll make me happier, more importantly. All right, guys. So if I have power, I will be online. I'll be answering any questions that you have. Please ask, you know, if you want to know other ideas for these happiness things, or you want to share things that you've tried and succeeded at, or things that you've tried and failed and tell everyone not to do, please, please, please put them in the comments because that's wonderful. We all learn, and that's the purpose of a webinar. Yeah, if I am online, I will respond there and then. If not, when the power comes back on Thursday, I will respond to all your comments and your questions then. But I'm really, really looking forward. Please, please ask questions and put comments in. I really love hearing from you. It lets me know there's someone out there. And I really hope that you have enjoyed this webinar. I hope you found it useful and you've learned something, and that you have been a little bit entertained, because, you know, I do like to do that too. All right, bye.